maybe 2 years ago when I was kind of really thinking about coaching, and I was like, wow, I really want to build up my swim runners because I see this outlet that's kind of missing. And especially in the United States, we don't have a lot of swim run coaches, but then I think the athletes are kind of timid. A lot of swim runners come from triathlon or something, and it's a new sport where we have all these questions, but then we're also looking for that adventure. But that you can still have structure with your adventure, and the coach can keep you reliable, keep you healthy, and give you kind of a different perspective on how you're training.
Welcome to the Löw Tide Böyz, a Swimrun Podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and this is episode 229 of the show. We've got a brand new show format for everyone this week. This yet-to-be-named show format is definitely not going to be called Coach's Corner, but definitely features our first guest, Coach Liz Gilden. She's a former pro triathlete, a fellow Swimrun kool-aid drinker, and half of team #Batman's parents. She's also the official meteorologist of the Löw Tide Böyz, a Swimrun podcast, and an endurance coach.
It's quite the accolades.
A lot of accolades.
Stacked.
In this show, we pepper her with basically all the questions that people DM us about.
Yeah, absolutely. But first, we need your help. So this show format doesn't have a name. Coach's Corner is taken already. I know Rich Roll uses that. I was listening to the Purple Patch Fitness podcast. Matt Dixon uses Coach's Corner. But we want some community help with this. What should we call a show that happens on a semi-regular basis that features a coach that we can ask them questions, get the listeners' questions answered? We've kicked around many different names between the Löw Tide Böyz Brain Trust.
Yeah, Coach's Nook.
The Nook.
Something with Fika.
Something
just not Coach's Corner.
Chinwag with Coach. Things like this is all things we thought about. But we DM us your ideas. Shoot those over to our email address. And if we pick your idea, you're going to get official Löw Tide Böyz drip package. For all you, it's what the kids call the outfit. You got the hat, you get the shirt, buff, whatever stuff we have lying around. I'm sure we'll throw some stickers in there as well. Mm-hmm. But we need your help on this one. So send us your ideas. What should we call our coaches?
Our not coaches corner.
Not coaches corner.
Yeah, this is a really fun conversation. Liz is great. We've gotten to know her over the years. We did Race World Championship with her a few years ago. Saw her and Jacob, her husband, at all the races, husband and swimmer partner. And yeah, I mean, just she's amazing. And I think we really answered a host of questions.
Absolutely.
Beginners and advanced alike, I think.
Yeah, I think we did cover a good spectrum, and people email us and DM us their questions. We kind of have an okay idea. We do our best to answer the question, but we also bring those to a proper expert on this. In this case, Coach Liz here on that. And again, this one, we've been trying to do more video, so there is a video version of this podcast as well. So Liz is our first video guest on here. Usually the video ones are reserved for just Chris and I's mugs. So head on over to YouTube, smash the subscribe button, the bell, whatever, all sorts of stuff they have going on over there, or YouTube, or just listen to us in your ears like you normally do. Sure. It's up to you.
Any way you want.
But I think that does it. Without further ado, we're just going to get right into the nuggets. Lots of great stuff here from Coach Liz, half of Team Batman's parents.
#Batman's parents.
#Batman's parents. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Batman's parents.
Welcome back to the show. Half of Team Batman's parents, Liz Gilden, swimrun coach, triathlon coach, meteorologist.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Going good. You got it all.
Did I?
Meteorologist. That's the one that throws
down.
people sometimes.
So before we get into asking you a bunch of coaching questions, we know that you're about to head on a trip to do some swim running. So why don't you tell us a little bit what you have coming up?
Yeah, so we're heading over to Sweden, leave on Wednesday, and we're participating in the EX swim run. So not Attilo branded, but think of it in the United States as like one of those local swim run productions. And it's in Stockholm proper, so it should be a cool experience. First day, we're doing the EX Super Sprint, so it'll be a 800-meter run, 200-meter swim, 200-meter run back to the finish, see if you can qualify for the next heat.
Are you representing Team USA?
Yeah, basically. And we'll be doing that individual time trials. So I go with the girls. My husband Jacob will go with the guys, and then the next day we'll team up together.
Nice. Oh, nice. That I'm excited to get your perspective on it once you get back, because it always seems like such a cool event every time we see videos and that stuff. Although the last 200 meters, I think, isn't it like kind of uphill?
Uphill.
Like a real burner. Yep. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing's going to be a burner, actually. So.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having Nicholas on like right after the first. I mean, we've had him on basically every year around the time of the race, because it's such a, the first person to do some sort of super sprint type situation in swim run. And it's just so great that, we're still finding new ways to experience the sport that we all love.
Yeah. I mean, I personally was just really drawn when I saw that somebody was putting on this type of format, because I used to race like short course triathlon, and so it was heavily focused on the speed. So I was like, oh, this is really cool, like just cool combination of the two sports that we love the most, and going hard and seeing how you can do.
Nice. I'm excited for you all there. And you Teams Batman parents had sort of a down year last year, I guess, and you were back earlier this year with Swimrun Lake James. You're back in action there. How did that go? What's the quick and dirty on the Swimrun Lake James kicking off the Swimrun USA season here?
Yep, the race went well, came away with the win, which was nice to be back on top, but more importantly, it was just nice to race together again after a hard year last year, personally for us, and then hopefully we can race a couple more times this year together and see if we can build on a lot of the mistakes that we made in Lake James. Were kind of just like those rookie mistakes, first race of the year, where you gotta work out the kinks. We gotta fix the tether. We gotta figure out how to get our goggles on faster, things like that. But all that we can work on.
Yeah, all the rust busting, all the rust busting on that. Nice. And Swimrun Lake James is always a good one there. But so yeah, we don't have a select name for this one. We were thinking maybe
still workshopping it.
Chinwag with Coach was one. Coach's Nook potentially to play off the Coach's Corner. Is a Nook a smaller corner, or?
Yeah, it's like a little place where you'd have a spot of tea.
Yeah, or a coffee. Oh, is that? And Batman's on trying to get in here.
Yes.
Listeners at home, Batman is making his appearance. Yeah, so I think, we've known you for a while now. We've had you on the show before, and I guess starting December, you started coaching Chipper as his swim run coach. So
charity case.
So thank you so much for taking him on. That's great. I'm reaping some of the benefits of that, so I appreciate that. But I'm curious, this whole show is really thinking about, well, how can we help people train up for swim run so they can have either their first experience or their 10th experience be the one where it's like, okay, finally put it together. Now, from a coaching perspective, obviously you're training the physical system, you're training, a little bit on the strategy and stuff like that. But how do you think about, like, if, when Chipper came to you, use him as a guinea pig and be like, hey, I want you to coach me for swim run, like, what sort of process do you go through to see if you're a good fit, A, and then B, like how you start structuring that program?
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing with me and my coaching is that every athlete is their own individual. So nobody's going to get a cookie cutter plan. You need to develop a great relationship with each other where you can kind of trust that the athlete understands the workouts and knows what to do, but they're also going to give you feedback to help you either change workouts down the line or just like really learn the best way to work with each other. It's just like a swim run relationship. Like you want to race well with your partner, but you also, as a coach to athlete relationship, you got to have that good bond. And so the first couple of weeks kind of is like a trial and error. Like you're learning each other. For my coached athletes, I usually try a couple different types of workouts so that I can read how they're responding to this. And what I mean by that is that some athletes, they love the data. They want like, tell me to run 7-minute pace and this heart rate, and I'm going to lock it in. And other athletes, they get like super stressed about that. And so sometimes it's just like, okay, just go run, easy endurance run 5 miles, and that's it. And then sometimes it's just like a combination of that. And so the athlete is ultimately going to become the fastest if the stressors are balanced. And so that's physical stressors, but then that's also the family stressors. And so I'm just kind of there to help read the signs of like, are we doing enough? Are we doing too little? And where can we make the improvements?
Nice. Yeah, I see it a little bit like kind of like the coaches. You're like Minority Report, where you're kind of like moving different aspects around. You have all these different inputs. Like, yeah, it's more than just, what swim and run and strength or whatever workouts are they doing. But yeah, I have work travel coming up, so I don't have access to a pool, or we have a bunch of birthday parties this weekend and we can't make the big run happen or whatever. So you're sort of aligning it there. I like your approach on sort of the different pieces of what the athlete responds to, because I know, when Chris and I were triathlon, and maybe triathletes get a bad rap about this, it's like, you're riding your bike or you're running and you're like staring at your watch, like, I'm at 200 watts and I should be at 210 kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I personally have tried to kind of move towards more of like perceived effort type of stuff there. And I guess that's, for me, the easiest to maintain during a race or translate from like, hey, this effort feels 3 out of 5, and I could translate that in a race as well. Hopefully that's the signals you got back.
Yeah.
But
I mean, a lot of the times the coach is actually trying to hold the athletes back. We find a lot of the times our athletes, they always want to go harder than they need to go, and actually don't need to be going that hard. They do need to get the work done on the days that they're supposed to get the work done. But ultimately, sometimes we're just kind of like pulling you back, giving you the paces that we think you should be running and not exactly running yourself to the ground.
Yeah. And a real common question that we get in our emails and our DMs a lot is, how do you kind of think about structuring a week? Let's keep it specific to swimrun. I know you work with triathletes as well, but between your athletes, do you get like the sort of clean slate? Like you have 100% control of when the swim and the run and the strength days, or is it more like, hey, here's when the pool's open kind of stuff, or is it a blend of both?
Yeah, that's one of the first questions I ask my athletes, kind of like, what do you do right now that works for you? Because I want to try to make that calendar work. So obviously, like if the pool's only open Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then I'm not going to give them a swim on Tuesday. I just know it's impossible. Like I said, it's that balance of the stressors. So make it work for the athlete. And there is a time and place where like we might need to do some bigger volume weeks and try to find time to find that extra pool session. But for the most part, if I was just giving you kind of like a sample schedule, is that we're going to have probably 3 or 4 swims, 3 or 4 runs, 1 to 2 strength sessions, ideally. And that's going to be 1 longer run, 1 longer swim, 1 speed swim, 1 either speed run or like strength run, technique and drills. And it's going to be, again, what does the individual need to work on? And so those first couple of weeks when we're playing trial and error, the coach is always trying to look for like, what is this athlete's limiter and what is this athlete's strength? And so the limiter is how the athlete's actually going to get better. So if I can pick up on different things through a couple of series of testing that I do with my athletes and see really like what's their difference in their aerobic speeds and their anaerobic speeds. And then we can try to work on which part of the equation needs to get worked on. And that will end up fixing the other part of the equation.
Yeah. So let's take let's take swimming in particular. So for Swimrun, again, a question we get a lot. It's like, oh, I got this race coming up. Like, how do I know I'm prepared on the swim? How do you think about setting up an athlete just to make sure, obviously it's going to be race specific, whether you're doing like the world champs or, like a sprint race or something, but how do you go about sort of thinking through how much swimming is going to be enough to get someone prepared?
Yeah. That is a tough question because like the world champs is a much bigger swim portion than just going out and doing our local sprint swim run. But I feel like I can help build the confidence of the athletes by getting them in the pool that 3 or 4 times. If they can find that consistent routine, they're going to start to develop like this confidence of like, okay, I saw what I did last week, but then this week I improved on that. My coaching philosophy is a little different than some of the other swim coaches out there. I focus on something called USRPT, which is ultra short course racing. And so what that means is that you're going to be holding a pretty fast pace for short reps, such as 25s, 50s, and 75s. And a lot of athletes are like, okay, well, how's that going to make me swim faster for like a 5K? But these short reps teach the neuromuscular development to find that pace so that you can execute it in a longer race. And it's also a very efficient way to make good usage of your time if you can only go to the swim pool 3 times a week. Because a lot of us are limited, don't have time to go to the pool. Going to the pool is a major time suck. Like you got to drive there, then you got to swim, drive back, and like it's hard. I get it. But then I also mix in those just classical endurance swims. And for my swim runners, obviously, I actually have them do a lot of swimming before we start to add the pull buoys and the paddles and things like that, because that is a way to become comfortable with the swim. And then when you have the pull buoy and the paddles, you're like, oh, wow, this seems pretty easy because you can keep your heart rate down much lower.
Yeah. So Liz, let me just ask you a follow up real quick on that. So what I'm kind of hearing between the lines is kind of this idea. It's like to get a swim runner feel like they're ready for the swim. It's almost like you need to have the mindset. It's like, I'm a strong swimmer, and feeling like you're a strong swimmer and confident can just let you sort of deal with the ambiguity and the randomness of swim run events. And the way you kind of build that which is, I think it's something, the advice that we give people as well, is like, just start swimming, keep swimming, swim all the time, like keep that going in the background. Is that sort of like, from the mindset side of things, is having people kind of feel like they're a strong swimmer is a huge advantage going into racing?
Yes, I definitely think so. And the mind has a lot to do with how you perform on race day anyway. So if you're going in with a positive mindset, you're usually going to perform better. Now, pool swimming and open water swimming, the execution is a little bit different. So I usually find, and I even found this for myself when I was competing at a high level, the translation from the pool to the open water is delayed. So like once you get that really good speed in the pool and you're holding that pace over and over again, it does take a little bit of practice to get it into the open water scene, but it's possible. And a lot of like technique oriented things that happen in the open water, such as like keeping your cadence up higher when it's very choppy, that's going to help you get through the water, knowing how to breathe to the left or to the right, depending on which way the waves are coming. And even your paddle size. Paddle size is going to impact that a lot. I know that you guys have talked about the different ranges of paddles on the show before, and the big paddles are fast. Like we all know that. But if it doesn't work for an athlete's stroke, then I'm going to tell them to not use that. And the only way we know is by practicing.
Yeah. Nice. And we'll keep on the gear theme because again, this is a common one that we get is, hey, I'm in the pool 3-4 days a week, and I have a swim run coming up. I'm doing Whistler in July, for example. How much of my swimming should I be doing with paddles and pull buoy? Is it 100%? Is it none? Where do you kind of think about layering that on? It sounds like your approach. It sounds like the gear's sort of a little bit delayed from establish the confidence and just regular pool swimming and then layer the gear on. How do you think about that once sort of the season starts and the athlete has a little bit of that confidence in the water?
Yeah, so there's two like ways to use the paddles and the gear, and like the first phase of that is like the strength building phase, and so that's when you're training, and we start to implement like alternate 200 paddle, 200 swim, things like that. So you're starting to get like a little bit of like, all right, now we're strengthening the muscles to be able to use the paddles for a very long time. And then we get into the race specificity part when you're getting closer to the races. And that's going to be, depending on the athlete, anywhere from 2 months to 1 month out, and depending on what the total duration of the swim is going to be. So take, for example, Whistler's coming up in July. So here we are about a month and a half out. I think it's like 7,800 meters, something like that. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, usually when I'm building up a set, you want to have like half of the distance covered pull paddle, and you can do that straight through with no problems. But that is something that like you have to build up to. Yeah. And I know that I do differ in the world of some swim run coaches or training people really only just swim with pull buoy and paddle, and that's fine if your body can handle it. But also not getting too reliant on those gear choices. Like I said, it always comes back to like being that swimmer and executing swim.
Yeah. Like you forget your paddles. Are you good? Is your race over because you can't swim without paddles? Let me ask you a question, Liz. So I want to talk about swimrun practice in particular, or setting up swimrun practices or sessions in particular. But I want to zoom out a little bit because you're obviously super stoked on swimrun. We're super stoked on swimrun. No one shows up at the World Championship if you're not. And I'm curious, as a coach who is coming into this swimrun space and was coaching triathletes and now more swim runners, like does that get you really excited to see more swim runners like seeking out coaching and try to be more specific to train as swim runners?
Yeah, definitely. I think this was like maybe 2 years ago when I was kind of really thinking about coaching, and I was like, wow, I really want to build up my swim runners. Because I see this outlet that's kind of missing. And especially in the United States, we don't have a lot of swim run coaches, but then I think the athletes are kind of timid. A lot of swim runners come from triathlon or something, and it's a new sport where we have all these questions, but then we're also looking for that adventure. But that you can still have structure with your adventure, and the coach can keep you reliable, keep you healthy, and give you kind of a different perspective on how you're training. I actually work with a variety of athletes. Doesn't matter if you're elite level or very super beginner. And the one thing that when an athlete comes to me is that I usually feel that like sense of like, I really am excited about this and I want to do this. And if it ever starts to feel like I'm burning out, then that's like when we need to step back and say, okay, why are we doing this?
Yeah. I used to think that, I mean, that's one thing I say all the time. It's like, this is a hobby. It should be enhancing your life. And if it's not doing that, then maybe you need to reevaluate your relationship with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as I've mentioned, I like to kind of ask my athletes, like, what's the schedule that works for them, but also not being afraid to implement other types of training. And so maybe this is like my triathlon mentality background, is that you can say you still like biking. Like, it's okay to still go on bike rides. Like, that's great aerobic fitness building. Or somebody wants to go on a skiing trip, cross-country skiing. They like to go mountain biking, like, I don't know, like whatever it is they like to do, like we can work that into the schedule. Like, it's all really good aerobic fitness. And so we just like play to the athlete's strengths and what makes them happy.
Nice. I'm the theme I'm hearing from all this around, how to structure your training week, your workouts and things like that is like, don't try to force something that doesn't make sense for how your life is set up, family, work, everything. Like, if you try to force the square peg in the round hole kind of thing, it's going to blow up at some point. Make it work for what works for you, and that's where you're going to get the most success from like performance output, from like your training output, and sort of longevity and having fun through the whole process, which I think is not top of mind enough. I feel like for some folks.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the swim run community is very similar to like the ultra running community, where we're very welcoming of each other. The one thing that I loved the most when I first started racing swim run was at the finish line, nobody was asking you like, what was your bike time?
What was your bike split?
And I just love that. Like we're all cheering for each other. And so it's just, you can go fast. Like we have some real elite swim runners out there, and like, but then you can also hang out with them, and it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guilty. I definitely probably asked Chris what his bike split was at Vineman almost immediately after. So guilty as charged, but no one's like, what was your Arno split?
Right. But I think it's also like a relationship. Like, right. Like what we do now is we ask ourselves what our form score is on our swim goggles. Be like, oh, what's your score? Because Chipper has like a head roll issue. Is it the head roll?
It's time to neutral, Chris.
Time to neutral.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I thought it was an error in the software.
I think it's yeah.
It was so bad. I thought
upgrade,
it was a
upgrade
fault
your firmware,
dude.
So I think it's your kind of relationship with it and everything. But yeah, I think all those points are super well taken, Liz. Now zooming way back into training. Some runs are happening. People are doing their swim run practice and stuff. How do you think about sort of setting up swim run practices for people, for your clients, and kind of like what factors do you take into kind of putting a plan together for those?
Yeah, so just like an athlete who's a runner, we call it running years. I call it swim run years. So if it's a brand new athlete, the amount of repetitions that you do just doing a basic transition, just swimming and running, like they don't even need specific paces or anything. You got to go do the swim run and practice and learn, oh, I forgot to put my goggles on, and oh, I got to do this. And then the more experienced swim runners, that's when I can start to play around with, okay, your race has a big climb at the end of the race, so let's hit the end of the swim run practice as a hard, like 20-minute effort to stimulate that race. So there's ways of putting in some race techniques, and then there's also just the joy of doing swim run. Then we're going to have some of the athletes who like don't have open water access, and so it's like, how do I do this? I actually think it's totally fine if you can do some swim runs in the pool. So not running like around the pool deck, but like,
yeah, that's a no-no. We all know that, right? Everybody.
The lifeguards have told me several times.
No running on the pool deck.
So if you have, so we're lucky, like we have a great trail system like right outside our pool. So like I go back in, put my clothes on as fast as I can, and then just run out the door. And then I come back and I'll do that 2 or 3 times. And yeah, I got to pack a lot of clothes, but like whatever, it's the best I can do because I don't have the open water. But then if you have open water, that's great experience, and you can do a couple swim runs. And even if the open water doesn't have like a great place to go run afterwards, just like running along the shore, diving back in, practicing that transition, something you can do to simulate that like higher heart rate when you're racing is doing some surges and then kind of like dialing it back down and like reminding yourself that, okay, yeah, my heart rate's spiked right now, but I can bring it back down and keep on racing.
Yeah, I know we've done that in the past, Chris. That's been set up just a little, not even like a 25-yard swim, but we'll just run down.
Almost like EX
Yeah, very much like EX. Do a quick transition in, and then kind of that like, maybe it's 5-stroke, 15-stroke kind of surge where you're like, okay, we're taking this swim out quick, kind of settle in, then turn right back into the shore, get out, transition again, and kind of go through that a couple times. And that definitely, I mean, that's what we hear when we do the shakeout swim runs, or anyone that's really new. It's like, oh man, just doing it a few times, I really got way more comfortable doing it. It's like, okay, imagine if doing that the day before the race, you did that like months before the race, like how much more comfortable you would get.
Yeah, for sure. And Chipper, and I think like, I hadn't really thought about it the way you mentioned it, Liz, sort of like your swim run age. Like, yes, if you're a new swim runner, there's so many little things to fiddle with that it can almost be, overwhelming and all consuming. So you don't really even get to really feel like you're swim running because you're just like, oh, what do I do with my shit? It's like, oh, let me get this sorted. And it's really, so getting on top of that early And kind of going through that learning curve is really, it seems like almost like a primary thing to get to what you were saying, Liz, in terms of getting to like the joy of it, because it's not fun when you're like, oh, I dropped my paddles again. It's like, oh, what do I do with my thing? But once you're past that, then it's like, hey, look at us doing this like ridiculous activity.
Yeah. And I think you learn a lot. You learn, there's different ways to mount your buoy, and like some people like it this way and some people like it that way, and you learn what's comfortable for you, and that also adds to racing faster because you feel comfortable in your gear. How about fourth discipline, nutrition? That comes super important to both those little swim run practices and on race day, because you need to know what is working for your body. And I think a lot of the times we forget kind of to eat because we're swimming, but when we get out, we got to start eating. And I mean, I'm even victim to this. My first swim run, maybe it was my second swim run, but I was like, I'm just going to blast by this aid station. I got to get up this hill. I'm running fast, and never saw the aid station again until I was bonking on the way back down.
Like, where's that aid station now?
We literally at the finish line were like, wow, never skip an aid station ever again. Like, even if you don't think you need it, you just take fuel right then. And then swimming in colder waters too, that drives the metabolism up a little bit, so you actually need more calories than you think.
Yeah, that's a little secret pro tip right there. I think that's something that Chipper and I do, is like, any swimrun race, if you hit an aid station, I don't care if I took a gel like 2 minutes before. It's like, aid station, you take something in, some water, some electrolyte drink, half a gel, quarter of a gel, doesn't matter, but you take something down.
Yeah, it's literally like force feeding at that aid station. If it's a little bit of a gel or just a squeeze and you throw it away, like, it's just but you're gonna finish the race, you're gonna be under fueled. It's almost impossible not to. So like, any calories you can get in, I think is what we have found.
Yeah, and no one's ever said their race was ruined because they had that. They spent 10 seconds having that half gel, that gratuitous half gel at the aid
If
station.
anything, they raced better because they had that.
Right, exactly.
Gel.
Yeah, I mean, that's some of our best like races that we felt like the most from an energy level perspective is when we have really been almost feeling over the top on fueling. And I think in Austin, we try to do a good job of this. It's like Chris and I will kind of do our plan the night before. And it's like our rule that we have is that every aid station, you're eating a gel when you're there. Just that's the rule. And I think that's really just kind of helps keep those energy levels. Like, if you can avoid kind of the downturn or the spikes and whatever, then that's when we felt we've had kind of the best performance. And your sort of recommendation or your thinking on that in terms of fueling is like, every practice you should be working on finding out what works for you. If that's 60 grams of carbs or 90, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think honestly, every session is a learning opportunity, but in particular, those weekend sessions when you're going a little bit longer, I think it's super important to like test your race morning breakfast. Then say you have to drive over to the trails, like be drinking on your solution, whatever drink mix that is that works for you. And then bring in all your gels and bars, whatever it is that works for you. I actually make my athletes kind of give me that feedback back after. And I see the athletes that recover much faster, all the athletes that are taking in as much fuel as they can during the race. They end up not only recovering faster, but like just feeling better and not having many stomach issues. Under fueling actually can cause stomach issues and gut issues while racing. So sometimes if an athlete comes to me saying they have had nutrition problems in the past, we'll really start working on that plan from the get-go, even just for like hour sessions, like even just sipping on some calories or having a gel throughout the session, even though you're like, it's only an hour, just like to start priming the gut to get ready for that. If you're going to race like the world champs, like this is super important because you have such a long day out there. But if your gut is so well primed that you know that you can take in anything, then you're going to enjoy that fika on the course. Like I know for me, I was eating those little Swedish buns like at every aid station. And they saved me. Like at no point was I ever like bonking or anything, because I was like, another cinnamon bun, I'm gonna eat that. And just like, I never regretted it. I just kept going. It worked out.
Canel Boular for the win. Now speaking of the world champs, so yesterday I shout out to Mike and Liza from Team Calicoa. They were up in Northern California. I was hanging out with them, and they were asking me for world championship advice. And I was like, well, if I can give you one random piece of advice that you probably haven't heard, is to practice carrying a ton of crap, because for the world champs in particular, and I know we've had this experience where you put on that suit in the morning, on race morning, like, man, I am like loaded down with gels. I got like 20 gels on board, the whole thing. And I'm pretty sure that you're going to agree that was good advice to practice that, so you can simulate that before the race. So it isn't race morning where like, damn, I'm carrying like 20 pounds of gels. But I'm curious, like, how do you think about helping people sort of prepare for the demands in swimming in particular, of like all the stuff you got to carry, all the different things you have to take into account? Is it really just like practice for race day kind of thing?
Yeah, practice, but also talk to your partner, because maybe your partner can carry something that is uncomfortable to you. So for example, like my husband will always carry like the first aid kit, because he's the stronger runner. And so it's like one less thing that's going to be bogging me down. Those kangaroo tops from ARC are amazing, because you can fit so much in there. I remember at my world champs, like you said, I had so much stuff in my shirt that, like, if I had my handheld water system tucked into it, it was like pounding into my chest. And so like, that's where, if I had practiced with that, which I didn't, I would have known that maybe I needed to find a different pocket to put that handheld. And so like, again, that's practicing and finding out what works for you. Hopefully, if you're doing world champs and you're from the United States, racing Casco is ideal, because it's great timing and you can get a good session in where you can practice all these things.
Yeah. That's definitely specific for the world champs. I think anytime someone asks, if it's like, hey, if you could do Casco, it's definitely going to help you. It's a solid, 4 to 5, 6 hour training, quote unquote, training session for world champs / race.
It's a good timing. It's a good tune up. This isn't sponsored content for Odyssey USA, but
we both have
Attila USA. Attila. We're both wearing let the record reflect, we're both wearing Odyssey shirts this morning when we're recording. But yeah, I think like Casco, nothing is gonna match the World Championship course. Nothing's gonna match the Stockholm Archipelago, the flavor of the water, just the randomness of the whole thing. The jellyfish, but it's about a month before the race, maybe I don't know, maybe a little bit less than a month this year. And it's like it's the only thing that comes even close, right? So if that's all we have that's going to get us even somewhat prepared, it just makes a lot of sense for teams that are even interested in, maybe they're not on their world championship journey yet. They're thinking about putting it on. It's like, hey, why don't you do Casco first and then make your decision whether you want to go for the world championship.
Yeah. Something else I think is a good habit to practice with is bringing things that you might not think you'll need. And so like a tip would be like, if you have stomach problems sometimes, like bringing Tums or something antacid to like help with that. And maybe if you're only doing a 2-hour practice run, you don't get that stomach problem, but you might get it in like a 5-hour session. So bringing extra things. It sounds bizarre, but like if you think you're going to need to change your socks or something, just like put an extra pair of socks in your bag. I don't know anyone who would change their socks during the race, but you never know if you have problems. We usually bring an extra pair of goggles in case one of the other goggles break.
Yeah, that's a good call. And same, and we had this experience. Same with the fueling too. Like, maybe you can pound gels, no problem, for 4 or 5 hours straight. Your stomach's good with that. But what about hours 5, 6, 7, 8 to 12? This is sort of uncharted territory for some folks, but I think it's a good opportunity to try that out. Or maybe it's not 90 grams of carbs per hour. Maybe it's more like 70, 80 is what your stomach can tolerate a little bit better for those longer distances. And it's good to understand those things, obviously.
Yeah. And if you do have that kind of problem, I actually find the best solution for that is like you have one fluid, so like a gel, and then you balance it with a solid, like a Stroopwafel waffle or a Cliff Bar or something like that, and you keep going back and forth with that. The other question I always get is about caffeine. When do you start hitting caffeine during a race? Typically, you want to hold off for like as long as possible. If it's like a 10-hour race, definitely try to hold off until that like 5 or 6 hours in. If it's a 4-hour race, 2.5 is usually okay. But then the thing is with caffeine is once you start hitting it, you should really keep hitting it. And that's where athletes can kind of go wrong, because that's when you start going up and down in waves with energy. But if you're super caffeine sensitive, one hit and then a regular gel and then another caffeinated gel like might actually be okay too. But that's, again, you got to practice it.
That's actually what I've been currently practicing, because I am ridiculously caffeine sensitive. And
untrained,
but I see
untrained,
it,
I say.
So I see it as, hey, that's an advantage. I know that I'm a hyper responder to caffeine. I'd like to keep it that way. So I've been experimenting with gels that have just a very light amount of caffeine. So like a 20 milligram hit, which is might as well be 100 for me, right? so yeah, and actually, again, I've just kind of been messing around with it, trying to see what works to like get to a high energy level and then manage to kind of like ride the lightning for however long I have left. And yeah, so I've kind of been doing like hit the caffeine gel like once per hour or once every hour and a half rather than like every 20 minutes. Cause I guess I don't want to get like Chipper, who probably, my 20 would be your 100 or your 80 or something. I don't mean disrespect. You drink coffee.
I drink coffee. So like I take the 100 milligram ones, which would like, I think you've taken one of those and it's been like, too much for you. So it's good to also know like, what your limits are.
Like I'm scared of Red Bull. I'll never touch a 5-hour energy. I'm legit scared what would happen.
Sounds like you're doing the right thing.
All right,
good confirmation, Chris. Nice.
That's what I love these episodes. Completely self-serving.
Just validate everything that we're doing, please. Man, I feel like we covered a lot. What is there any stone unturned? I think I have one now. Okay.
You turned your own stone.
I just turned my own stones. When you show up at that race with your partner, and many partners aren't in the fortunate situation of Chris and I that we're neighbors with each other, how do you think about to like really maximize, hey, it's our first race. We've never tethered together. We've never done that. What should we do the day or two before when the partners are at the same location to kind of like really maximize time together to have a good day on race day?
Yeah. Of course, I feel like that depends if you're gunning for the win or you're just coming in to do this for fun. I feel like we're always like a combination of both. Like we want to do the best, get the best of ourselves, but we're also there for the adventure. If you can, the day before, getting in with your partner, just putting the tether on whoever's leading, just getting used to that tether, because swimming on a tether is a little different for the person in the back. Making sure the length of it is correct, that will help a lot. Talking through your plan. So if you know you're going to take turns leading, or talk to each other how you respond when you start hurting. Like, do you want to be talked to, or do you just want me to like shut up and like keep running? So I actually raced with a new partner last year, met her the day before the race, and we did not do a practice anything. We just discussed our first 2 transitions. Those were going to be slow and we were going to figure it out. And then literally as the race went on, we got better and better and more comfortable, and we could kind of read each other's energy. Like if she needed a lift, I would try to boost her up, and ended up being a great day, which is, I feel like a lot of swim runners who are just coming together to meet each other, like you end up having a fun adventure, but there's those first couple of transitions just need to be a little bit more relaxed. And that'll set you up for having more fun the rest of the day.
Nice. That's definitely good advice. And yeah, certainly during a swim run, if it's your first one or first few, like the learning curve through the actual race is like, you're like, oh man, you're getting it as the race is kind of unfolding, which is a pretty unique kind of thing to happen in sort of sports.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting too, because it's a steep learning curve, but it's short, right? Mm-hmm. Like it only really takes a couple transitions for you to be like, oh, okay. It's like, all right, this is how we should do this. And you already start sort of optimizing for what works. I'm curious, since you have raced with multiple partners, like, I guess it's more of like asking you for a cosign on just like how important it to have an open channel of communication and kind of being aligned on goals and expectations. Like, I think it's safe to say that it's super important, but I'd just love to hear it from you, Liz, like as a coach, like how do you try to like build that into, getting your athletes to kind of be open to that type of communication and being like vulnerable, I guess.
Yeah. Just being like, first of all, knowing where you are as an athlete with like your capabilities, your abilities, your pacing, things like that, and being honest about that. Because like if you know that pace is too hot, then tell them that. Like tell them we just need to pull it back just a little bit, and not being afraid that your partner is going to be judging you for that. Because they're not going to get to the finish line any faster if they're dragging you. Also kind of sticking to the things that work for you, primarily like nutrition or gear choice. Don't let your partner like influence you. Like if you run hot and your partner's wearing the Orno, but you decide to wear the Uto, like go with it. That's what you're comfortable with. If at an aid station your partner doesn't want anything, but you're like, I got to take this gel, then do it. Like keep to what works. I would say also kind of like trusting your instincts. So maybe if like you're the lead swimmer, but your partner's not really like trusting you, like you can tell because they'll like yell out to you like go left or go right, and I'm like I am going left. Or if vice versa, you take turns and like you're trying to like
backseat sighting.
Yeah, you're yelling to them like we should go this way. Like just you gotta trust the partner that they're going the right way. And if you really think they're off, then like have a talk with them in the middle of the water and decide who wants to lead going forward. But yeah. Definitely put that tether on. That's one of the first swim runs that me and my husband did together. We decided not to tether, and we learned very quickly that was a bad idea.
Yeah, tethering is a huge advantage. We highly recommend it for young teams or new teams.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I think.
Well,
I feel like we covered a lot.
We've turned a lot of stones. Now, Liz. We've been sending a ton of swim runners your way for coaching. How's your panel? Do you have space for more swim runners to take on more athletes?
Right now I'm pretty full. Always open to discussing if I could potentially fit you in, but yes, pretty maxed out for the year. And I do that mainly as respect for like my own self and for the athlete. I want to give you the attention that you deserve. And if I have too many athletes, I just can't handle that.
For sure.
And I'm demanding a lot of attention.
Chipper is very needy.
I am very needy. I have so many comments, I think.
It's like no bullshit. Do you regret taking Chipper on this?
No, and you're not. You're leaving just the right amount of comments. Like athletes who don't leave me comments, that's when I have to start coming after them. So
it's never the problem. I have plenty of opinions about myself.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Coach Liz, thank you so much for joining us and dropping some good knowledge bombs for everyone from people starting to do their first swim run and how to architect their training to folks that are maybe taking on the world champs this year and some things that they need to think about. But really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today.
Yeah, it's great. Anytime.
Yeah, we'll have you back on Not Coach's Corner. How's that for a name?
Oh.
Just not Coach's
Corner. But we have a coach.
I do like the idea around FICA and coaches. because I'm big on the fika.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. We'll workshop some stuff.
Fika with Coach. Anyway, we don't need to do that on Thanks, Liz.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating or review, since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swim run.
Check out our website, lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z, for swimrun resources, including gear guides, tips, how-to videos, and so much more. Make sure to check out our meme page at The Löw Tide Böyz on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, send us a DM or email us at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Riding Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swim run and other activities.
Lots of activities.
Lots of activities.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
Then a run.
And then a swim.
Then another run.
Then another swim.
Then run some more.
Just keep going.
Let's go.
And then stop at some point because,
And fuel. Don't forget to fuel.
Gotta fuel too.
Of course, yes.